Unlike the body, the soul can be killed multiple times. How should I kill him next? This has to be one of the most toxic, most evil, and yet most terrifying quotes I've ever heard from a villain. To put into context, Mahito's explaining how he already stabbed Yuji, our protagonist, straight through the heart. Not literally, but in a more metaphorical sense. Mahito has already killed Yuji's soul once by torturing his mind with the traumatizing, unexpected, and pathetic end to Junpei, the boy who was manipulated by Mahito, leading him down into an evil spiral after taking advantage of his pain. So what is it that makes Mahito so terrifying? This quote is only the start to Mahito's madness. You see, after rereading Jujutsu Kaisen, I finally have the answers to this question. But before we continue, make sure to leave a like, and if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll make this into a series dissecting another one of my favorite anime villains. And I'll let you guys choose between Garo from One Punch Man or Pain from Naruto once we reach that goal. This fascination and genuine joy that Mahito seeks from killing Yuji's soul time and time over is so terrifying and creepy, and it's amplified by Mahito's childlike presence while also being absolutely evil, twisted, and masochistic. If you ever heard the story of the black-eyed children, this was something that terrified me when I was really young. Just the idea of these evil demonic children showing up at your doorsteps is honestly terrifying, and that's because kids are seen as innocents. So mixing a childlike nature with evil is already setting up Mahito to be a phenomenal villain. What's interesting about Mahito is that it's these human-like qualities that actually work towards his advantage, giving him an in when it comes to manipulation. Gaining trust comes easier, putting up a false initial impression of the wicked cursed spirit being an ambitious and joyful boy. It's almost charming, and so you can understand how someone so down bad like Junpei could be so susceptible to falling down this path being manipulated by Mahito. But Jujutsu Kaisen still makes these scenarios feel so real, so possible to happen through human flaws is what makes Mahito so frightening. This childlike nature manifests in Mahito playing and toying with people's emotions like if they're action figures. While young kids would choose to play with Batman figurines or Barbies, Mahito toys with humans for play. He toys with their emotions. He toys with their decisions and actions. He toys with their morality, pushing Junpei into absolute darkness and desperation, pushing Itadori Yuji, our main character, into spiral questioning his own ideals and moral standing, pushing him to kill and question his own beliefs. And this is what makes Mahito such a great character and a great villain specifically. Yuji's always been a bit introspective, but Mahito brings these traumatizing trials which puts everything Yuji lives by and believes into the test, which allows Yuji to grow and redefine his beliefs. Yuji starts out very simple-minded in the sense that he doesn't want to kill anyone, but this line gets very blurry once he sees firsthand someone he got along with and shared a common interest in movies be transfigured into a curse, something Yuji can't change or reverse. And it even begs the question, is this really Junpei anymore? What makes all of this even more interesting is when you consider that Mahito is the opposite of Junpei and these people who become curses, a human curse giving him the appearance of a human on the outside, while really being a curse, and then his powers allow him to take the actual humans and give them the appearance of being a curse by forcing the transformation. And if you flip this relation to Yuji, a perfect foil, as Yuji is also in a way both curse and human as the holder of Sukuna. The absolute joy and pleasure Mahito takes in the most twisted and sickest forms of bringing pain, suffering, humiliation, and self-destruction to people is what makes him such a terrifying villain, because Mahito has a fascination with molding, destroying, and transfiguring souls simply because he can. He's powerful and someone who's so freakish and ghoulish in a fight, but what I love about Mahito is that Yuji is fighting two battles at once when facing him. He's fighting him in the literal and physical sense, but also fighting a mentally draining battle against Mahito, who is constantly scraping at Yuji's mind and soul simultaneously. Another thing I love about Mahito is how abrupt and unexpectedly he transfigured Junpei with no remorse. It's something so shocking and crazy in the moment when you first see it, and the reason why it's so hard for Yuji to face mentally in that moment is because it's so hard to even process how easily he did something so wrong. It's hard to even wrap your head around something so infuriating and dark. But Mahito doing this without a care in the world elevates the shock factor. It sets the tone that in the blink of an eye, Jujutsu Kaisen is a series that can take a drastic turn for the worse. It establishes the necessary aspect to speed and reaction, the importance of acting quickly and making every moment count, because the consequences in this world are so high. This one moment elevated the stakes of the entire series series immensely, with Mahito showing any regular Joe Schmo, anyone even remotely weak can be left behind. And this will make Yuji and Mahito one of the most interesting dynamics in all of anime. It makes their future confrontations all the more exciting and satisfying, raising the anticipation for every time they meet. We want rematches and fights between the two because we know the emotional weight that it holds to Yuji's character. Some moments like him pulling a final stun out of his ass against Mekamaru makes me wonder, is he coping when he says this, or is he genuinely so insane that he allowed Mekamaru to push him to his absolute limits just for the fun and sense of danger and the exhilarating feeling of winning this fight while coming so close to dying? I mean, even Brain Ghetto points out how Mahito was cutting it extremely close in this fight. Another example is Mahito making the Shibuya incident so much fun, and being the curse to enact a friendly competition of running into Yuji during Shibuya. It's almost like Mahito is a flip on the typical shonen protagonist. Think Luffy, Goku, Gon, and all these extremely childish, simple-minded, and immature behaviors. So in a weird way, he's like a shonen protagonist gone wrong, which is an interesting concept, having the foil and main enemy of the protagonist, Yuji, having these qualities as well. And so maybe that also adds to what makes Mahito feel so disturbing, since we're so accustomed to these traits being aligned with the main character and protagonist that we root for, not the guy who we hate and want to see die. Aesthetically, this creepiness is also furthered by his design. The Frankenstein-like stitching, the alien shapeshifting, morphing and transfiguring his body constantly into different weapons and beings, which leads to even more unpredictability. Yuji's fighting style is a lot more simple. Big, powerful punches and insane athletic ability, but they're both effective and entertaining at the end of the day. Gege decides to give Mahito an ability that is so famous and well known in Shonen Jump's history, a reference to Naruto's notorious Shadow Clone Jutsu. Mahito splits himself into two different Mahitos during the Shibuya arc. And if you thought one Mahito running around causing mayhem was bad enough, well, now we have another one. Mahito is even able to telepathically communicate or understand the other clones' minds without speaking. And similar to in Naruto, he uses this to fight multiple opponents at once. But while he may seem like a fun protagonist character, Mahito becomes the biggest menace during this time in Shibuya. The first heartbreaking moment that makes you absolutely hate Mahito's guts is when he kills Nanami without any remorse. And Junpei was one thing, as it was always kind of obvious and a conscious setup for Junpei being a tragic character manipulated by the evil cursed spirit. But Nanami's death was the moment that solidified the terror and fear that Mahito even showing up can cause. Because after this, who knew who else would be in danger? Mahito continuously raises stakes for us as the readers, fearing for characters like Nanami, which we've grown to love to make it out alive. And you can feel every bit of rage inside Yuji as Mahito continues his killing spree throughout the entire arc, because somehow Nanami was really only the beginning of the psychological torment that would come out of Shibuya. In many series, you would expect a moment like Mahito killing Nanami to only exist as setting the precedent, not a commonality to push even further after going after more and more beloved characters. But soon after Nanami, Mahito runs into Nobara, and all I'm thinking is Nobara has plot armor, right? She's part of the main trio. This is all manufactured tension, but Gege isn't bluffing with Mahito. He's so terrifying because in the situations he's placed in, no matter who it's against, he always comes through as a true villain and does the absolute worst, the most horrible deeds that no one wants to happen. But that is a great villain, a villain who takes dubs and continuously forces you to accept him as a monster, a villain that needs to be put down immediately. That's the feeling that you get constantly with Mahito. I began the video by quoting Mahito saying, "Unlike the body, the soul can be killed multiple times. How should I kill him next?" Well, we find out that in Shibuya, because during Mahito's fight against Nobara, we see Mahito say, "I'll bring her dead body to Yuji Itadori and destroy his soul," once again showing pleasure and excitement from Mahito crushing Yuji. I mean, I never would have predicted when he asked this question that Nobara would be the one to end up dying. And I remember this chapter was so shocking, so crazy, and unlike anything I'd ever seen. All I could think of was he did it. Gege really did this. It wasn't all just to manipulate stakes, and Nanami's death was only a precursor to a never-ending cycle. It actually amazes me of how much destruction Mahito causes, bringing in an endless pain to Yuji as long as he exists. Time and time again, he shocks me with how much he can really piss me off as a fan of these characters. And this looming aura surrounding Mahito, and this thought of, oh no, please not again, almost begging and pleading for Yuji to finish him off. Mahito highlights the greatness that is the character that Gege has cultivated throughout his time, and this on-edge on the edge of your seat's thriller-like feeling is what drives us to never feel any sense of safety whenever he's around. And if you think Nobara Nanami's death was the end of this, he goes after my second favorite character in the series, Todo. It genuinely pisses me off to see Gege bring us something so amazing in Todo's clapping curse technique Boogie Woogie and then strip it all away by cutting off Todo's hand. Besides death itself, I can't think of a more tragic ending to Shibuya than the most charismatic and entertaining ability just vanish in the blink of an eye thanks to this absolute menace. And going into the Todo and Yuji fight versus Mahito, it truly gets intense. I love how they're all pushing each other to their absolute limits, with Mahito fighting a 2v1 and still keeping up and fighting for his life. There's no playing around here, and usually you'd expect Mahito to run away like when he did against Nanami and Yuji in the first fight. But here Mahito does have this sense of confidence to him. He does have this sense of powering up and pushing past his limits once again like a shonen protagonist. And I also think it's beautifully ironic that the more and more powerful Mahito becomes, he ends up looking so alien. For someone who's the manifestation of hatred of humans, he goes from looking like someone who's a human child to becoming someone that's straying so far away from human. Mahito's terrifying new form feels like something straight out of Prometheus or Ben 10, something truly evil and completely otherworldly. Mahito tells Yuji that he is the same as him, and that he needs to understand this if he's ever going to be him. Especially among villains who are designed an intentional foil to the main protagonist, we're not so different as you think. In fact, we're the same trope works so well because it causes introspection. It forces Yuji into a different point of view on the villain from the protagonist's side. Some may find this trope overdone or corny, but I've always been a fan of this one implemented correctly. And what I love about Mahito's second fight with Yuji is that Gege adds subtle little details to showcase this even more during the battle. For example, my favorite thing about Yuji's fighting style in the beginning of JJK was his delayed curse energy punches. Such a cool concept with Yuji having incredible physical raw power and then having the delayed curse energy. And this gives you an annoying 1-2 punch from only one punch, and is a really cool idea that I've always loved, especially in the anime as well. It's such a unique and interesting technique that's special and perfect for Yuji. And if you remember, in their first battle, Yuji had just adopted this power and used it against Mahito. But the reason I bring this up is because Gege throws in something so cool during this fight. Yuji points out Mahito's delayed transfiguration. Now, in my eyes, it was 100% a callback to Yuji's delayed curse energy, but with a Mahito flip on it. Mahito throws a soul at Yuji, and then Yuji has to dodge after anticipating, but a few seconds after being thrown, it transfigures into a sharp and deadly weapon. This little attention to detail in this fight is so rewarding if you catch on to this, as the entire theme of the fight is leaning on their similarities and differences. I also think that one reason that Mahito is one of the best villains in JJK is because of how much we hate him over time. It's one thing for a villain to be terrifying, but there's nothing worse, or I guess better, than a villain you cannot stand and still commands a presence of fear. This presence is the best way that I can describe Mahito, because we constantly see Mahito run away, lie, deceive, and manipulate people. We see him run away from Nanami in their first fight and just straight up begin booking it once he realized Nobara could actually be his shadow clone. These cowardly tendencies are once again so annoying, but it makes them all the more frustrating and infuriating to deal with. I actually think Yuji versus Mahito is such a perfectly written dynamic. He's the perfect antagonist for Yuji and a much better matchup for Yuji than Sukuna, who for most of the series was hyped up to be Gojo's opponent and honestly would squash Yuji like a bug. But one thing that I do wish that we could have seen is one more 1v1 rematch of Yuji and Mahito, as we were completely robbed of the satisfaction of Yuji finishing off Mahito after Kenjaku finished him off. In this conclusion, after running out of transfigured humans, seeing the true fear flipped onto Mahito and pierced his soul was incredible. For someone so terrifying to showcase true fear in some amazing artwork by Gege, this really gets the whole point across. It felt so good to see Mahito, this monster in his most helpless state, face to face with Yuji, and a very serious and calm Yuji. Early in the arc, Mahito literally told Yuji that he wouldn't be able to win unless he understood how they're the same. And so after spending the entire video and Gege using the entire build-up between these two characters to showcase why Mahito is so damn terrifying, seeing Yuji become someone as terrifying as Mahito in the eyes of a cursed spirit is a twist that I could have never seen coming, as Yuji the wolf hunts down the weak and helpless rabbit Mahito. If you enjoyed the video or anything I said, make sure that you leave a like, subscribe for future videos like this, and watch this video where I explain why you should check out the most toxic manga ever.